Buenas noches. Kalinikti. How many know what I just said? What language was that? No, español es buenas noches. Kalinikti is Greek. I only know that because I had a Greek professor and she told us how to do all that stuff. All right, Kali is, I'm not going to get into a language lesson now. Anyways, I can get carried away and keep on going. Sorry. Anyways, thank you for coming out once again. This is our fourth night. That's correct. And all the meetings from now on will be in this room. So you want to park on this side. And that hallway is open today because there's another meeting over there. If not, you'd have to do this big walk around, which I don't want you to because it's not that safe to walk on the sidewalk over there. So just make it a mental note that all meetings will be on this side from here on out, unless otherwise we notify you because of some change that happens. So today's topic is get your gut healthy. As you can tell, I am holding my breath as I talk, sucking it in because of the conversation that we're about to have. So with no further ado, let's have a prayer and we'll let Ruben take over. Heavenly Father, we thank you, God, for this time that you bring us back together into this place to learn more about your awesome creation that is our bodies and that you gave us and help us to take good care of it. And thank you for the messengers that you sent to help us to do so. We pray in your name. Amen. It's all yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Pedro.
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. All right. We're going to talk about the gut today because it is so important. It is so important to be healthy. How many of you have had too many tummy aches? Too many tummy aches. Okay, how many of you know people that have far too many tummy problems? Yes, it's disconcerting, isn't it? And it doesn't feel good. So we're going to talk about today what we've learned in the medical arena about the microbiome, especially in the last 20 years. It's been remarkable, the science that we've been able to learn about this magical microbiome, which is so incredible because it really regulates so much of our health. And it's so important. So many of my clients have come to me with irritable bowel syndrome, colitis, diverticulitis, pancreatitis, colon cancer, and the list goes on. And all of that is associated with what we put in our mouth, but so much more. So much more. So today's a powerful conversation because it all begins with what we eat. It really does. And that's not only what we eat in terms of food, but it's also what we're consuming in our mind. All of it matters. And we're going to talk about that today. Cover a lot of territory today. I'm going to go through the material fairly quickly, and then I'll open it up for questions after we're done with that. Please write down any questions that you want to ask me. I will stay here till the very end of all your questions. I will not go home until all of you have been satisfied. I promise you that. So I'm not going home until that happens. Now, we're going to go through a lot of material. I'm going to send you, for those how many of you are new? You've never been to one of my seminars before. Please raise your hands. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Now, you're going to get lots of gifts from me. You're going to get an email after probably tomorrow. I'll send it out tomorrow. And that email is going to contain a link for all the slides from today. It will include all the resources from this seminar, all the research, videos, TED Talks, you name it. I'm going to put all that in there. I'm also going to give you for free about 3,000 recipes to help you get started. Will that be enough? Victoria, is that enough? Okay, good. So you're going to get plenty of resources so that you can get started. And you'll find out more about what I do and how I can support you. I am so excited to be here. I first started learning about the gut up close and personal when I was conducting autopsies. Yes, isn't that a wonderful topic to talk about? I was conducting autopsies back in 1980. I had graduated from California Lutheran University, and I started working at the Las Robles Regional Medical Center. And my plan was to work in the hospital, go into medical technology as a backup plan, and then go to medical school at UC Davis School of Medicine. So I spent 2 years working in the hospital, and as a pathologist assistant, which I got promoted to being very soon after I started working in the hospital, I helped the pathologist in doing autopsies. Now, one of my distinct duties as a pathologist assistant, I got to do in every autopsy, I got to take the entire intestinal tract from the esophagus all the way to the rectum, hoist it out of the body cavity, put it into a big, deep stainless steel wash basin, and take my surgical scissors and split open the entire 18 to 25 feet of intestinal tract and wash it out by hand in order to prepare the intestinal tract for examination by the pathologist. Now, I got first dibs on seeing what the intestinal tract looked like every single time. Most of the people that we did autopsies on had died from complications of chronic disease. Aneurysms, heart disease, strokes, cancer, diabetes complications, Alzheimer's, you name it, I got to see it. Every single person who died from complications of chronic disease, their intestinal tract all looked the same. And it wasn't very pretty. It was pretty wiped out. The folds that are normally there were flattened out. There was this slimy coating on the inside. It smelled really nasty, just so you know. And a lot of times I actually felt polyps, pockets, diverticuli, and I even felt cancers. I got to feel that with my hands. It was there, and I washed it out, and I go, wow, there's something there. The third leading cause of cancer deaths is colon cancer. So it's rather common. So I got to see lots of that. Now, one autopsy changed everything for me. It was a Seventh-day Adventist woman who came to the hospital with shortness of breath in her mid-70s and passed away within a couple of hours. And she had a genetic defect, a ventral septal defect, a hole between the ventricles of her heart. Most people with that defect, Dr. Glover said, would rarely live past their 20s. She beat the odds by over 50 years. How many of you would like to beat the odds by over 50 years? Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Glover wanted to know more. He was absolutely amazed by this. Now, he had been a surgeon before he became a pathologist. So he asked to meet with the family. I got to sit in. And he shared what he had discovered, but then he asked, how did she live? Good question, right? And the family proceeded to tell us that she was a Seventh-day Adventist who followed all the rules, Pedro. All of them. So no meat, no dairy, no eggs, no alcohol, no refined sugar, no processed foods. She had a beautiful big garden in her backyard, grew all of her own vegetables, had lots of fruit trees, walked 5 miles a day every day for over 40 years that they knew about. She was very physically active. She was positive, loving, kind, compassionate. Oh, guess what? She didn't complain about anything. And she didn't gossip either. Amazing. I dissected her intestinal tract, and I got to tell you, it was extraordinary. It was as if I was dissecting the intestinal tract of a healthy, athletic teenager. It was that vibrant. It was extraordinary. I'm clear that was a divine gift to me. Doctors are not required to do autopsies in their medical training. Not one. They're only required to observe one. There is nothing quite like the experience of actually dissecting an entire intestinal tract and discovering a flawless intestinal tract. That was amazing. It was amazing. So that was part of what really led me in this journey of mine to really learn and study what is it that makes a difference in terms of the quality of our lifestyle that could lead to longevity and beating the odds. So my name, Ruben J. Guzman, MPH, does not stand for the speed that I drive my car. Stands for Masters in Public Health, and LMP stands for Lifestyle Medicine Professional. Now, a little bit in my education, I just shared that with you already. So I went to Cal Lutheran undergraduate, 2 years in the hospital, UC Davis School of Medicine, and I did research to enter the MD PhD program. And then from there, I went to UCLA in the School of Public Health because that's what I was really passionate about. When I got finished with my master's, I realized I was passionate about promoting health and preventing disease, and I was no longer interested in treating disease with pharmaceutical drugs and surgical procedures. So I did not go back to medical school, even though I had the option to do so. And I started studying lifestyle medicine on my own, went into healthcare administration for over a dozen years. I was actually a hospital administrator at Kaiser Hospital in South Sacramento. Yes, I lived up here. So it was really wonderful. And then I went into consulting and continued my own research. Then in 2016, I discovered that there is now a new specialty of the American Medical Association. It's a specialty that's dedicated to preventing, reversing, and treating chronic disease. And it's called the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. It's an evidence-based approach. No weird stuff, no airy-fairy stuff. Evidence-based approach to prevent, reverse, and treat chronic disease by empowering people to change their lifestyle in many areas, including a plant-predominant eating pattern and many other things, sleep and rest and stress management and relationships. All of it is important. All of it. It all matters. Now, a lot of this is also based on the research that we've been doing from the blue zones. And what we see in the blue zones is that all of this matters and more. How many of you have seen the documentary on Netflix, Live to 100 Years? How many of you have seen it? How many of you have not seen it? Okay, you need to watch it. That's a homework assignment. Okay, it is fantastic because it showcases the Seventh-day Adventists as one of the groups, one of the longest living groups of people on the face of the planet. It is a fabulous documentary. You must watch it. Now, lifestyle medicine, as Dr. Wayne Dysinger said, is the foundation for modern healthcare of the future, because 80% of healthcare right now is dedicated to taking care of chronic disease. 80% of chronic disease is actually caused by lifestyle. We say 20% is contributed to by genetics, but 80% by lifestyle. So, if the disease is caused by lifestyle, the foundation ought to be a lifestyle treatment, and doesn't that make sense? Absolutely to me. This is what I had been looking for nearly 30 years at that point. And they announced board certification for the first time for physicians, MDs and DOs, but the second category for professionals, PhDs, and those with a master's in a health-related field. Yeah. I was exhilarated, studied for an entire year. October 2018, I became one of the first board-certified lifestyle medicine professionals in the world. I couldn't be more proud. It took me 30 years. I found my tribe. And I'm also a member of the Institute of Coaching out of Harvard. Many of us in lifestyle medicine are. If you Google my name, yes, it's true. I did write these 3 books in the world of swimming, just so you know. And that is now the world's best-selling swimming drill book. It's sold 555 copies. Now, I've also written these 2 books. This book was published in 2011, Evolving Health, and this is the mock-up cover. There's going to be color added to it. This will be out soon. I just finished editing the final chapter. So is going to lay out and design next to how to fully live. I can't even begin to tell you how excited I am. So I'm planning to have this out hopefully by the end of July. By the time we finish this series, we'll have a book signing. Yes. How would that be? All right, so I get to live into this quote that Thomas Edison said well over 100 years ago, that the doctor of the future will give no medicine, but will instruct his patient in the care of the human frame, in diet, and in the cause and prevention of disease. Doesn't that make sense? And this is what we get to do in lifestyle medicine. So it's wonderful to be a part of this. Just to let you know, the reason I'm here is because I am passionate about eliminating chronic disease from the face of the planet, empowering every single person to live a thriving, healthy, happy life. I have absolutely no gimmicks, no schemes. I have nothing up my sleeve. I have no products to sell you whatsoever. I'm an educator. I'm a teacher. I've been a university professor. I love to empower people. That's what I do professionally in the career. I empower CEOs and executives in leadership. I empower people in their health. That's why I'm here. All of you matter. And my 4 children matter to me because I think, as many of my teachers have taught me, one of the things that's important for us as adults is to leave a legacy for our posterity. Our future posterity need a better planet than how we showed up. And it's important that we attend to that. So that's why I'm here, to make a difference for my children and my community and for all of you. So that's why I'm here. So let's get diving in. I think Virgil was correct. He said this over 2,000 years ago, that the greatest wealth that any of us can have truly is our health. Aristotle added to that in saying that a man or a woman who has their health has 1,000 wishes. But a person who does not have their health has but only one wish, yes. So the predicament that we face in the culture that we live in is that far too many people displace the importance of health, and they focus more on making money. And as the Dalai Lama was asked what surprised him most about mankind, he said that man sacrifices his health in order to make money. And then he sacrifices money in a desperate attempt to try to recuperate his health. And then he is so anxious about the future that he does not enjoy the present, the result being that he does not live in the present or the future. He lives as if he is never going to die and then dies having never really lived. And it's so sad because it happens far too often. I've seen it far too many times. I've lost a lot of friends that I've played basketball with over the years because they did not attend to their health. So I've seen it firsthand. So we need to not only learn how to function differently, but as one of my favorite teachers told me many, many years ago in a galaxy far away, you must unlearn what you have learned. And that's what we need to do. Most of us don't realize that we're all conditioned to believe what we believe. We all are. Every single one of us. Now, some of you are thinking to yourself, no, I'm not conditioned. No, we all are. I promise you. And if you don't believe that you're conditioned, I'm going to test you right now. See if you can complete this jingle. Plop, plop, fizz, fizz. Okay, that ad hasn't played in over 45 years. You're conditioned. We all are. Every single one of us. So here's what we're going to cover today. I'm going to talk about the context and the framework for health. I cover this in many of my seminars because it's very important to understand. It's the foundation. And then we're going to talk about the magical microbiome and what makes it so fascinating. And then we'll talk about the condition of dysbiosis. This is when the gut is not working and what causes that. So we'll talk about that. And then we're going to talk about how we can actually take on a fiber-fueled approach. And I'm going to share with you some of the wisdom of my good friend, Dr. Will Bulsiewicz, who's a gastroenterologist, brilliant. And so I'm going to share that information with you. And then we'll talk about how you can create a thriving, successful, happy lifestyle that you can sustain for the rest of your life. How many of you would like to make the rest of your life The best of your life. All right, very good. So let's get started. We got lots to do, lots to cover. So the context for health begins with this quote from my dear professor at California Lutheran University, Dr. Michael Kalitsky. And one day in a comparative anatomy and physiology class, he said, remember that all of life is in one of two states at any given moment. Either it is surviving or it is thriving, and that's all there is. And it kind of surprised me when he said this, and I was not really getting it. So I raised my hand. I said, Dr. Kalitsky, are you saying it's just one or the other? I'm thinking there's got to be a bell-shaped distribution curve or some kind of spectrum here. I just finished taking statistics. So, and he said, no, it's one or the other. I didn't understand, and he said, just sit with it, Ruben, you'll figure it out. I hated when he said that to me. I sat with that for 3 years. 3 years. And then I'm in my first year of medical school, and I'm taking a class called embryology. How many of you taken embryology besides Victoria? I know Victoria has. Anybody else? Any other healthcare professionals? So embryology is this amazing class, isn't it? It's this amazing process. It's the study of the embryonic period of human development, which is from the moment of conception to the point where everything is there, and now it just gets bigger. So after that, we call it a fetus. This period corresponds with the first trimester of a pregnancy. How many mothers do we have in the room? How many of you remember your first trimester? Most women do. Why? Hormones go all over the place. It's a crazy time. You're creating another entire human being inside your body. It's extraordinary and miraculous. How many fathers do we have in the room? How many of you remember when she went through her first trimester? You remember that? So the thing is, it's quite an extraordinary time. Early on in our development, we all look like this, a ball of cells that you cannot tell apart. You cannot distinguish them. This is called the blastomere. But then this ball of cells gets bigger and bigger with more and more and more cells. Eventually, this ball folds inward on itself. And wouldn't you know it, by divine design, it starts to form the first organ system of the body to become distinguished and operational. And it forms a tube. This tube of cells is known as the neural tube. And the neural tube gives rise to what we call the limbic brain, which is the core of your brain. And it also gives rise to the entire spinal cord. The professor said, this is the electrical system of the human body. Now, like any basic electrical system, it's got a positive and a negative current. We are no different. So the positive current in the human body is referred to as the parasympathetic state. So when we're in the parasympathetic state, it affects every organ system and every cell in a particular way. Every cell in your body is affected. It's all on at the same time. Come on in. So that's the parasympathetic state. The sympathetic state, the negative current, when it is on, it's going to affect every organ system and every cell in a different way. These two systems are polar opposite of each other. We do not operate both at the same time. That would cause us short. So we operate either in the parasympathetic state or in the sympathetic state at any given moment. Now, we can go back and forth between the two. Now, this was very illuminating because the professor said it's either we are in the sympathetic state or the parasympathetic state. And that's when I finally realized what Dr. Kalitsky was trying to teach me 3 years earlier, that we are either surviving in the sympathetic state or we are thriving in the parasympathetic state, and that's all there is. Now, if you have issues with that design, please take it up with the designer, not with me. I'm just the messenger, okay? Now, here's what we have to realize. When we are in the sympathetic state, for whatever reason, physically, emotionally, mentally, or spiritually, for whatever reason, we're in the state of survival. We're reacting to that stress, and our body is wired to go through a whole set of processes, whole set of biochemical reactions, all kinds of things ensue. Now, we may recognize fight, flight, freeze, and fold, but it's even as subtle as a perceived threat is enough to trigger the sympathetic state. You wake up in the morning and you think to yourself, oh my God, I got to deal with George again. Oh, and you're in the sympathetic state right away. So it's very subtle and it's powerful. Here's what we show in the research, and it's very clear. Dr. Dean Ornish says it very well, that all chronic disease is the same disease. It's because we're in the sympathetic state far too much, far too often, and far too long. All chronic disease is caused by being in the sympathetic state far too much, far too often, and far too long. Everybody with me on that? Now, if you get this, this is so important. This is the crux of the context for health. This is what causes all chronic disease. Now, what keeps us there? There are many factors that keep us in the sympathetic state. One is when we're in the sympathetic state, our brain is wired, when we're in the sympathetic state, to seek out fat, salt, and sugar. How many of you know that one? Okay. That's going to be harmful to the gut. And we're also wired to conserve energy, seek pleasure, and avoid pain. So that's what we're wired to do when we're in the sympathetic state. Another thing that keeps us sick is our family pattern of behaviors. A lot of people think it's genetics. No, it's not genetics. It's that we just follow the same patterns that our family has followed for decades. Another thing that keeps us sick is the food industry. Do any of you truly believe that McDonald's and Carl's Jr. and Kentucky Fried Chicken have your health as their number one priority? I don't think so. Another thing that keeps us sick is our government system. We are the only industrialized nation on the face of the planet without universal health care. And then another thing that keeps us sick is the medical industry itself. And today I brought you a special present to see. Now, how many of you think your doctors know everything about nutrition? Anybody here? So at UC Davis School of Medicine, we had the most number of hours of nutrition of any medical school in the country. 10. 1 hour a week. The instructor was grossly obese. And obviously not a good candidate for healthy nutrition. Now, of all the courses in medical school, they gave us the book on nutrition. Here it is. I actually brought it for you. This is the book. They gave us beautiful, glossy, color pages. All right, beautiful. All right, these are beautiful pages, just beautiful. It's 100 pages long. Now, this book, it says nutrition, as you can plainly see. What you didn't see is what's at the bottom of the book. Little surprise. Anybody can read this? Upjohn. What is Upjohn? It's a pharmaceutical company, thank you. So connect the dots with me, if you will, like I did back in 1983. Every single medical student in the entire United States has been getting their nutrition information from a pharmaceutical company. Conflict of interest, perhaps? Just maybe? So it's really interesting how that works. So in lifestyle medicine, what we say is let's not give you medications when you're in the sympathetic state. Let's not give you surgical procedures when you're in the sympathetic state. Let's swing the pendulum from being predominantly in the sympathetic state, far too much, far too often, far too long, and move you into the parasympathetic state as much as we possibly can. Just like all the animals on the face of the planet, they live predominantly in the parasympathetic state. So this is what we need to be able to do. And we need to shift our central nervous system state to the parasympathetic. And guess what? Here is where we thrive. Here is where we heal. And this is what helps us to heal every aspect of our body and our health, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. It all connects, all of it. So it makes a huge difference. So in lifestyle medicine, we recognize that there are these 4 fundamental energies, like I just said, physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual energies. These all contribute to our well-being. This is not new, my friends. This has been around for centuries. We've known this. This is what we have to balance. To do that, we need to have lots of practices. It's not one pill. It's not one symptom that we need to address. No, we need to address a whole bunch of things in order to get this balance for well-being. We're complicated, aren't we? All of us are. Victoria knows, being a nurse, we are so complicated. So there are many things that contribute to our well-being. Here are 5 major elements that have been in the literature of wisdom for centuries. Number 1, that contributes to our well-being is the thoughts that we think. We are what we think. If we have stinking thinking, as my good old friend Zig Ziglar used to say, we'll be in the sympathetic state. So we need to practice positive thoughts. Second are the words that we speak. So we need to practice positive, uplifting, encouraging, supportive, loving, kind words. If we're gossiping, if we're complaining, if we're negative, critical, cynical, skeptical, we'll be in the sympathetic state. So our words are powerful. Third is going to be the actions that we take. Here's the problem that we face as human beings. Many of us have learned to always take care of other people first. How many of you know that club? Okay, liars, raise your hands. So many of us have learned to take care of other people first and put ourselves last. And then when it comes down to the crunch time, what we do is we let ourselves off the hook. I'm too busy. I got to take care of this person and this person and this person. I can't get to the gym. I got too much on my plate. I got to take care of this and this and this. I don't have time to cook a healthy meal. I'll just stop in at Wendy's. We let ourselves off the hook. So in order for us to really be responsible human beings, we have to attend to taking care of ourselves. We have to be responsible. The fourth secret is the company we keep. We have so much more research now on how impactful our relationships are. We've seen this with the blue zones. We've seen this in many other research studies. So our relationships matter. So it's important. If we surround ourselves with people with stinking thinking, you know who they are, okay, then that's going to impact us. How many of you have ever been drained by somebody emotionally? All right, yeah, it happens. So we have to be conscious and aware of being able to lift up our social circles and our connections. And the fifth, which is a surprising thing for most people, is the food that we eat. Yes, food affects your central nervous system. Yes, it does. How many parents know what it's like when you give your children the candy and the cookies? Yeah, you know what happens. They're on the sympathetic state. Yes, they're wired. That's a drug. So the thing is, food affects our central nervous system state. Absolutely. In lifestyle medicine, we expand on this even more. So all of these are important. Hydration, nutrition, physical activity, risky substance reduction, sleep, emotional well-being and stress management, healthy relationships, and happiness. If you get one thing from me tonight, is that you get that we have to be able to swing the pendulum from sympathetic to parasympathetic, and we need to use all of these practices, all of them. Now, tonight, I'm going to focus on nutrition, predominantly, a little bit on hydration, not much. But all of these are important. I have other seminars coming up where I will address most of the rest. So you have to keep coming back. Yes. Okay? So let's dive in. We've got lots to talk about. The purpose of lifestyle medicine is to empower you to build resilience. There's no such thing as perfection. What we want to do is build resilience so that you are hardier. In psychology, we call it hardiness. So we want to build that hardiness so that you're stronger physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. You're stronger. And then you have more resilience to weather the storms. Life hits all of us. So we want to build this resilience. So now let's dive into how we can do that when we address our gut. So the magical microbiome is what we've been looking at in the research for especially the last 30 years, since mid-90s, we started really diving into this. When I was in medical school in the early 80s, mid-80s, we didn't even address this. It wasn't even on the radar screen. But now it is. It's significant, and it makes a huge difference. So we need to understand how this works. It turns out from our research that our gut has approximately 39 trillion microbes. 39 trillion. That's a big number. I can't even wrap my head around it. It's so big. So our microbiome is amazing and it's diverse. There are so many different elements. We do have lots of bacteria. And a lot of people have been trained to think from advertising and everything that we've heard over the years that bacteria are bad, right? Not true. Not true. We need these bacteria. Most of the bacteria are actually good for us, and they help us in the digestion of our food and many other things. So bacteria are good. It's the right kind of bacteria. We also have fungi that are in competition with the bacteria. So we want to make sure that we really help our bacteria be strong, or the good bacteria. Archaea is another microbe. It's an ancient anaerobic microbe, which means it does not need oxygen. So it can function even without the presence of oxygen. And then there are parasites, which are the thieves. We all have some, and hopefully very few. So we want to keep that in check. And then lastly, we do have viruses, which are actually normal. Most of us have learned that viruses are bad. We got to kill the viruses. Not actually true. Animal viruses we don't need, but human viruses actually help keep the bacteria in perfect harmony. So we need all of these to be in balance. So think of it this way. Our microbiome, our gut, our intestinal system is a beautiful, beautiful forest. It's an ecosystem, and it needs to be in balance. How many of you love going on hikes and getting out to the woods? Yeah, one of my favorite places is Muir Woods. How many of you have been there? One of my favorite places to go. And it's so beautiful to go there and to see all the things that are growing there, this entire ecosystem. And you see the ferns, and you see the trees, and you see the animal life, and you see all this amazing ecosystem. It's beautiful, it's gorgeous, and it's so balanced. Our microbiome is like an ecosystem that we need to keep in excellent balance. There are 5 times more microbes in our human body than we have cells. That's amazing. Yeah, we have about 7 trillion cells in our body. We have 39 trillion microbes. Wow. So there's over 10,000 different species of microbes that we've identified worldwide. So there's a lot of variability. And we each have about somewhere between 300 to 1,000 different species. Every single person's got their own unique population. So we're all a little bit different in terms of that. Now, one of the things that I found shocking is that we're only about 10% human and we're about 90% bacteria. Wow. So we got to take care of these wonderful bacteria. Very important. Now, over the years, how many of you have heard things like carbs are bad? I got to eliminate all carbs. And how many of you tried eliminating particular things because you thought that they were bad? And you've done some of that. So here's what we've come to see now from studying the microbiome, is that elimination diets, they don't work. They don't work. Now, the quality is what we have to be able to improve overall. We each usually consume somewhere in the neighborhood of about 3 pounds of food a day on average. That's a lot of food. Now, if you permanently remove one food group, like carbs, the microbes that thrive on that food will eventually starve into extinction. And that's not a good thing. They may go dormant for a while, but eventually, if you completely eliminate it, they can go extinct. Now, they procreate and multiply very, very quickly if we feed these microbes. Our food feeds the microbes. So we need to have the right food to feed the microbes. Now, they can generate very quickly about 50 generations. That means they go from 1 to 2 to 4 to 8 to 16. Each of those is a generation. So they can multiply very, very quickly, very fast, within 24 hours. Now, it only takes one bite of a different type of food to actually start the process. One of the things that I've done with many of my patients with, for instance, colitis, ulcerative colitis, irritable bowel syndrome, and their diet was so, they basically had been eliminating a lot of different foods. So what we worked on is being able to reintroduce new types of foods by doing what we call microdosing. Microdosing is a term used to help you to realize, yeah, you don't need to eat a lot of it. You say, oh, but bananas give me problems. I have difficulty with that. I said, just have one little slice of banana. That's it. So let's just introduce one little bite of a different food. That's all. And that'll start the process of reintroducing and getting the bacteria in your gut to start procreating. Because if you have too much of something that you have eliminated the bacteria for, you will have difficulties. You will. So microdosing is a very important term to think about. And here's why. Because when we have stress, we have antibiotics, we have all kinds of things that basically start to kill off the bacteria. We end up with that ecosystem, that beautiful ecosystem, being ravaged. And this ravaging of the ecosystem is what we call dysbiosis. And this is exactly what we're doing to the Amazon forest. Amazon forests are the lungs of the earth. And we are ravaging the Amazon forest, and we're basically killing off our oxygen supply. So this is dysbiosis, and this is what happens, just to give you a visual of what happens in our gut when we start to kill off those healthy bacteria. We start to actually eliminate those wonderful parts of the ecosystem. So what happens, and this is a little complicated of a slide, but I just want to show you a little bit of this. When we have balance, and our gut is in balance, what we have is all of these wonderful bacteria in here, and then this SFAs. These are the magic term, short chain fatty acids. Short chain fatty acids, very important for our health. Short chain fatty acids actually help us to be healthy, and then what happens is our cells are able to produce the oxygen and convert it back to carbon dioxide, and we produce this wonderful short-chain fatty acid called butyrate. There's a few others I'll introduce you to in a few minutes, but it's wonderful. So we want this healthy system in balance. When we have dysbiosis, for whatever reason, those healthy bacteria are in short supply, and we end up with more of the facultative anaerobic bacteria, the bad guys. The bad guys that basically overtake the system. And then what happens is that we don't have those short-chain fatty acids, and now our cells are actually producing this oxygen, and we end up with bloating and gas. How many of you have ever experienced that? Okay, so that's what happens. So that's a sign, an indicator light for dysbiosis. So here are some symptoms associated with dysbiosis. See if any of these resonate with you or somebody you know. Abdominal pain and cramping, gas, bloating, distension, food sensitivities, food allergies, diarrhea, constipation, mucus in the stool, nausea, indigestion, heartburn, reflux, belching, weight gain, fatigue, brain fog, difficulty concentration, mood imbalance, anxiousness, skin breakouts, joint pains and muscle aches, weakness, bad breath, sinus congestion, shortness of breath, and wheezing. Those are all associated with dysbiosis, all of them. So it covers a lot, doesn't it? So the gut is very, very important. Dr. Bolsewicz talks about that there are 5 major axes of human health associated with the gut. So there's our immunity is affected by what we eat. Our metabolism is affected by what we eat. Our hormonal balance, our cognition, how we are able to think, our nervous system, and then also gene expression. So I'm going to go into each one of these a little bit. All right, so we can look at that. So let's start with the immune system. So it turns out that in our gut, all these bacteria, that 70% of our immune system actually lives in our gut. Isn't that amazing? So if you want to have a stronger immune system to resist colds and fevers and all those other diseases, the best way to do that is to strengthen your gut. It's not about taking medications over the counter. It doesn't matter how much vitamin C you take. No, we want to strengthen the immune system. Our microbiota is in constant communication with the immune system because all these immune cells live directly in proximity to the gut. They live right there. So 70% of our immune system's right there. Here's interesting facts about it from a medical standpoint. From 1960 to 2000, those 40 years, there's been a 10-fold increase in asthma. My good friend and colleague who I went to medical school with, Dr. Suzanne Tuber, she's an asthma specialist, and she has verified that this has been the case. And it's because there's been so much of dysbiosis in the gut. And then since 1950, type 1 diabetes, multiple sclerosis, Crohn's disease have increased by 300%, all related to the gut. So that's a huge increase clinically. So some of the immune-mediated conditions associated with dysbiosis, again, this all relates to what we eat. Type 1 diabetes, celiac disease, multiple sclerosis, asthma, food allergies, eczema, seasonal allergies. I always get tongue twisted with this one. Eosinophilic esophagitis, dermatitis herpetiformis, psoriasis, psoriatic arthritis, scleroderma, chronic fatigue syndrome, and antiphospholipid syndrome, how many of you have seen restless leg syndrome? Yeah, it happens. This is associated with it. Sjogren's syndrome, rheumatoid arthritis, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, microscopic colitis, ankylosing spondylitis, lupus, intestinal cystitis, autoimmune hepatitis, primary biliary cholangitis, sarcoidosis, fibromyalgia, Guillain-Barré syndrome, Beckett's disease, Kawasaki disease, ANCA-associated vasculitis. That's a long list. All associated with the immune system being affected at the level of the gut. So rather significant. Now we try to treat it medically from the traditional medicine, tries to treat this with medications. How many doctors ask, what are you eating? None of them do. Second area to look at is our metabolism. How many of you would like to have a faster metabolism? And you'd like to be able to have more energy and lose weight easily. How many of you would like to be able to do that? By the way, next session, we're going to talk about lose weight, feel great. Here's a little inkling into that. So when it comes to our metabolism, a lot of people think it's calories in, calories out. How many of you have ever heard that one before? It's completely false. Completely false, yes. Dr. Anderson, it's completely false. All right, so here's what we've shown in the research. Okay, we took a group of mice with sterile guts, no bacteria in their guts. Okay, so completely sterile, no guts. No bacteria in their guts. They had guts, but no bacteria in their guts. Now what we did is we transferred the microbiota from normal mice So we had a transfer of the bacteria from normal mice, and those mice ended up being normal. Then we took these mice with no bacteria in their gut, and we transferred the microbiome from obese mice, and those mice became obese. And then we took this group of mice and transferred the microbiota from underweight mice, and these mice became underweight. There's more than meets the eye. It's not about calories in, calories out. There's so much more. The microbiome is a critical factor in being able to be healthy. So metabolic conditions associated with dysbiosis: obesity, type 2 diabetes, coronary artery disease, hyperlipidemia, chronic kidney disease, gout, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, alcoholic steatohepatitis, acute alcoholic hepatitis, alcoholic cirrhosis, acute pancreatitis, and chronic pancreatitis, all associated with the microbiome. By the way, none of this was discussed in my nutrition class in medical school. Not one bit of it. Not one bit of it. Now, okay, so the next area we want to look at is the endocrine system of the human body, all our hormones. How many of you have thought to yourself, my hormones are off? This is really driving me crazy. If you've gone through menopause and you've had issues there, that's all related. So the endocrine system is absolutely an important part of how our body regulates our metabolism. The largest endocrine gland in the body is your gut. It's the largest one. All of these are your endocrine glands, and the biggest of which is your gut. Absolutely. Now, we were not taught this in medical school. We weren't, but it absolutely is the case. So it regulates your hormone flow, your gut-testicle axis, your pheromones. Here's an interesting thought. It's interesting that people usually know when they are compatible at the level of their microbiome with another person when they kiss them. Isn't that interesting? Our microbiomes can talk to each other. Fascinating. Now, here are some of the conditions associated with dysbiosis of the endocrine system. So endometriosis, it's a huge factor. Polycystic ovary syndrome, endometrial hyperplasia, female infertility, sexual dysfunction, hypothyroidism, breast cancer, endometrial cancer, prostate cancer, and erectile dysfunction. All of these are associated with the gut. All of them. Amazing, right? Now let's talk about the nervous system and cognition. So we know that there is a definite relationship between our gut and our brain. How many of you have heard the gut-brain relationship? Your gut is your second brain? Absolutely true. Absolutely true. Your gut is your second brain. So there's an axis. The HPA axis is the hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenal axis. That's what that HPA stands for. And that is an axis of connection and communication between our endocrine glands that regulates our neurotransmitters. So it's very important that we understand all of this is connected. Every part of our human body is connected to other parts. There is tremendous connection. And there's nerve connection all the way through. The gut contains 500 million nerves. That's 5 times more than your spinal cord. I can attest to this because when I was in medical school, I did the dissection for the nervous system into the gut. And so I dissected it all out. It was this incredible network of nerves feeding the entire gut. It's incredible. So there's a tremendous nervous supply. Gut microbes produce 90% of your serotonin, which is your happy hormone. How many of you like to be happy? Yeah. Okay. And then 50% of your dopamine hormone, which is your reward hormone, and over 30 different neurotransmitters. all in your gut. So what you eat matters. It all matters. Neuropsychiatric conditions that are associated with dysbiosis: Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, schizophrenia, ADHD. How many of you have heard so many people that have been diagnosed with ADHD, so many kids? It's all related to the gut. It really is. Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or Lou Gehrig's disease, chronic fatigue syndrome, restless leg syndrome, anxiety, depression, autism spectrum disorders, bipolar disorder, migraine headaches, fibromyalgia, hepatic encephalopathy. All of these are associated with what we eat. What we eat. I have a friend right now, she's a psychologist, and she called me up because she's got all of this anxiety and depression going on. And I first asked her, "What are you eating?" And you know what? She changed her diet. That's what happened. She changed her diet because when we were spending more time together, she had a whole food plant-based diet. Now, not so good. So it's completely changed. Now, another area that we have to understand is genetic expression. This is so important to understand. A lot of people think, I've got this genetic tendency in my family, I'm doomed. That's not true. It's not true. So the gut microbes make up about 99.5% of our genetic code, and you are only 0.5% human by genetics. So you're mostly bacteria, all right? So the thing is, our human genome is 99.9% identical person to person. Between all of us here, we're about 99.9% the same. Our microbiome, however, may be as much as 90% different. That's a big difference, our microbiome. Less than 20% of disease is based on genetics. And what we say in lifestyle medicine is that genes loads the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. So through epigenetics, which is this entire study of studying how our environment actually triggers our genes to be expressed in different ways, it's fascinating to see that our microbes have the ability to regulate gene expression. I'll say that again because this is real important. So our microbes have the ability to regulate gene expression. Very important. So think of it this way. Your genes are the wiring, but your microbes control the light switch. So it's real important for us to get the right microbes being healthy. So we want to be able to do that. As an example, celiac disease is a genetic disorder. So there's a gene for celiac disease. And what happens is that people with celiac disease cannot tolerate gluten, which usually shows up in wheat, barley, and rye. Those have the highest amount of gluten. Now, interestingly enough, 35% of the population actually has the celiac gene. Did you know that? Yeah, it's true. 35% carry the gene, but only 1% actually manifest the disease. 1%. However, in the last 50 years, we've seen a 500% increase in celiac disease being manifested. That's a shift in the microbes turning the switch on for celiac disease. And gluten intolerance. How many of you have heard of gluten intolerance? We see a lot of that. So that's what happens from the damage to the microbiota. So our microbiome is absolutely amazing. And we're learning more about this all the time. I try to keep up, but there's so much research happening all the time. So it's very important for us to understand this. Now, what determines your bacterial flora? That's probably your next question. So you have some control, and you have no control over other things. So you have no control over your genetics. Sorry, you can't change that. You have no control over your age. I can't do anything about that. Sorry, I've been trying. You have no control over the mode of delivery when you were born. Okay? That also has an impact. Well, because what we show in the research is that some people who they were born by C-section, they do not have as much of the microbes introduced on their body from their mother from passing from the vaginal canal. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. So there's a difference in resistance and health of the microbiome from C-section versus vaginal delivery. So we see that vaginal delivery actually increases the strength of the microbiome. Isn't that amazing? Holy cow, yes, I know. I said the same thing when I learned that. Yes. Generally, well, you can't control that, but you can influence it. Yeah, you can help it. You can help it. Yeah, you can help it. Now, what you do have control. Let's focus on what you do have control. So that's your nutrition. You have control over medications, antibiotics, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, contraceptives, steroids, your sleep, tobacco, caffeine, and alcohol, exercise, stress, relationships, and hydration. So you have a control over all of those things. So you want to take control of your health. And look at the list of what you do have control is longer. So you do have a lot of control. Realize that we live in a world that is overfed, undernourished, hypermedicated. So all of these influences are there. We can't control all of it. However, we can control our actions. We can take responsibility for what we do. So it's important that we recognize this. It's interesting. In the research, what we show is that there's actually a difference in how people have their microbes population. So there was research done in terms of colon cancer risk. And what we did is we looked at genetically very similar populations. So we did African Americans in the United States compared to South Africans, South Africans in South Africa. And what we did is we assessed their microbe population. Now, the Africans in South Africa have predominantly a plant-based diet. Not perfect, but predominantly. The African Americans have predominantly a standard American diet. I heard a good one just the other day. SAD. It's the satanic American diet. I like that. So what we showed was this, that the people who eat a lot more meat, dairy, and eggs, they're carnivorous in their diet, they're going to have a lot more of this particular bacteria in their gut called Bacteroides. This Bacteroides is then responsible for converting some of the foreign proteins in the meat, dairy, and eggs into what's called trimethylamine oxide, which is a very inflammatory agent. And what we now see is the primary agent for heart attacks, 80% of the cases. The herbivores in South Africa, instead of the Bacteroides, they have this other bacteria called Prevotella. And there's another one, a bifidobacteria as well. But this is very positive, and they have almost no Bacteroides. So it's completely different bacterial flora. And those two categories are very different. So we see this, and it's rather fascinating. So now, what does work? Now that I've really inspired you, right? So now, what works? So let's talk about what Dr. Will Bulsiewicz covers in this amazing book. I recommend this book to every single one of you. It's fabulous. He's got lots of podcasts and webinars as well. Fiber Fueled. His story, real briefly, it started with a woman. He was dating this gal. And he was struggling at the gym trying to lose weight and get fit, but he still had this extra 30, 35 pounds that he just couldn't get off. And he was working at the gym all the time, working hard. And this weight was just stubborn, would not come off. And he met this gal on a date. And she was eating all this wonderful, beautiful plant food. She was fit, trim, healthy, vibrant. Well, she got his attention, of course. So he started asking questions. Now, Will is very brilliant. I mean, he's not only a gastroenterologist and MD, he also has a master's in scientific investigation. Like, he knows how to do research better than anybody. He's really good at it. So she explained to him how she was on a plant-based diet. So he started to do the research on this because he wanted to impress her. And so he started looking into this for himself, for selfish reasons. But then he started trying it out for himself. And lo and behold, he lost the weight and felt a whole lot better. Wow. And he actually had married the gal, too. So that was a good move. So then he started testing this out with his patients just to experiment with a few. And they all got better. And then he decided to do more research in this. And what he discovered is that there's so much research to validate the power on a fiber-fueled dietary approach. So here's what he shows, is that we need to reconnect plants with our gut microbes. Only plants contain fiber. Only plants contain fiber. Only plants contain fiber. Everybody got it? Okay. All plants contain fiber. All plants contain fiber. Okay, so that's the deal. We need to have fiber. Why? Because our microbes actually live on it. That's what feeds them and helps them to be strong. So they need to have the fiber. There are millions, perhaps billions of different types of fibers. This is just one molecular diagram. Okay, now to make it simple, we boil it down to two major categories. Insoluble fiber, which is roughage, that doesn't break down. It's got a lot of cellulose in it. It doesn't break down very much. And then we have soluble fiber, which dissolves. It dissolves in liquid, so you can't see what it is anymore. So these are the two major categories. Now, we've heard about insoluble fiber. Many people have, how many of you had mothers or fathers that took their Metamucil? Right? My mother always took her Metamucil every night. So the thought was that you needed fiber so that you could actually move your poop. Okay, so that was the basic story on fiber. But there's much more to the story than just that. So that's insoluble fiber. We need to understand that there's a whole different category, and that's the soluble fiber. The soluble fiber is very, very important because when we eat, like if we're eating black beans here, that's going to feed these beautiful bacteria in our gut. So we need to be able to feed them. They live off the fiber. That's what makes them strong and healthy, and they digest it, and it makes them very healthy. And they're able to produce many beautiful byproducts that we need. So soluble fiber is the food for your gut microbes. Every plant species has unique fiber that feeds unique microbes. Every plant species has unique fiber that feeds unique microbes. So we want to have our diet be as diverse as possible. If you restrict or eliminate that plant from your diet, what will eventually happen is that you will shrink the population of those healthy bacteria and possibly eliminate them. We don't want to do that. So we have to rejuvenate them. So the key to a healthy microbiome is having as much diversity in your diet as you possibly can. Dr. Bolsowitz talks about having at least 30 different species of plant in your diet every single week. 30 different species. 30 different species. I have about 30 in my oatmeal every morning. So you want to have a lot of diversity. Okay, so this is just to give you an idea. This is some of the food that I eat. This is a salad, lots of diversity. This is some oatmeal, lots of diversity. This is another salad, lots of diversity. Have as much of diversity as you possibly can in every meal that you can have. The more diversity, the better. The better. A more diverse diet translates into more diverse microbiome. Diversity of plants gives your microbiome a diversity of fiber and then allows the diversity of microbes to be existent in your gut. That's what we want to do. So feed your microbiome as well as you can. When you do that, your microbes can feast on what we call prebiotic fiber. You've heard many people say, oh, you need probiotics. How many of you have heard that one? I need probiotics. You can never get enough probiotics from capsules, ever. It's insane. Throw them away. What you need is the prebiotic food, the diverse food. And that's going to give you these short-chain fatty acids, acetate, propionate, and butyrate, which are wonderful, beautiful, and amazing. They help our body in so many ways, so many ways. So here's the full picture. We need prebiotics from the foods, which will then feed the bacteria, that's the probiotics, and then that will lead to the postbiotics, which are all the things that we talked about earlier, all the wonderful things in the immune system and their neurotransmitters, everything. So we want to have those short-chain fatty acids are those postbiotics that we want to be able to have. So short-chain fatty acids have healing effects on your body in so many ways. You'll end up with more of the good guys in terms of bacteria. You'll end up with less of the bad guys. You'll end up being able to begin the process of reversing dysbiosis. And then it will strengthen your intestinal barrier. The lining of your gut will become stronger, and you'll start to heal that. And then you'll improve your motility, the ability for you to move food through your gut. So that's very good. You want your gut to be able to move things through fairly quickly. A healthy gut is able to transport all the food from the time you eat it through your gut in about 18 hours. That's a normal, healthy period of time. And then you'll end up reducing food sensitivity. How many of you have food sensitivities that you'd like to reduce? Okay, very good. So this is all very important. So be able to do this. Short-chain fatty acids have healing effects throughout the entire body. They are so healing. It's really wonderful. Your immune system gets better. Inflammation goes down. You're able to reduce the risk of cancer, heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and weight loss. You're able to reduce those diseases and improve weight loss. Cognition and brain health improve as well. The leading deficiency in the American diet is not protein. Yet, it's interesting. We show from the research the number one word that's on a food label that will increase sales is protein. If it says high in protein, it leads to more sales. We've been duped, hoodwinked, bamboozled, and deceived into thinking that we need more protein. That's not true. It's not true. All protein comes from plants. All protein comes from plants. And I happen to believe that Popeye was right all those years ago. Yes, absolutely right. So the leading deficiency is not protein, it's fiber. It's fiber. And just to prove something to you, this is 30 years on plant protein. This is an example of protein deficiency. I just wanted you to see it for yourself. All right, this is protein deficiency. I'm 67 years young, and I can still do 10 pull-ups. Any takers? Any takers? I know Dick can. All right, so we need fiber. That's what we need, and plants have it. There are two major categories, soluble and insoluble, all right? So the foods with insoluble fiber, all plants have insoluble fiber, but these are just some categories. My friend, Dr. Amanda Valdez-Mendez. And so I just wanted to show you this. So a lot of foods have insoluble fiber. The benefits of insoluble fiber, many. They help you in so many different ways. So you want to make sure you have plenty of fiber in your diet. All plant foods have it, but some have even more. And then there are foods with soluble fiber, which feed your bacteria. So there's lots of foods that have soluble fiber. All of these, fruits, vegetables, legumes, grains. There's so many different kinds that have soluble fiber. And the benefits, amazing, because that'll help you with your health. Everything that we've been talking about today, being able to reverse dysbiosis, all of those benefits, wonderful. So you want to have plenty of soluble fiber. When you have both soluble and insoluble fiber, what will happen is that you will poop like a champ. Yes, you will. Now, it is perfectly normal to have 2 to 3 bowel movements every single day, just so you know. It's perfectly normal to do that. That is normal to be able to do that. Most doctors never ask, how often do you defecate? They never ask that. I do. So it's important to know. So you want to be able to have excellent bowel health. Excellent bowel health. And you should check your poop. Okay? You should check your poop. There's different categories of poop. There's 7 different categories. Here's the chart. All right? Now, if you're a 3, 4, or 5, you're doing good. If you're a 1, 2, 6, or 7, not so good. So you want to make sure that you check your poop. If it has the consistency of soft serve ice cream, think Foster Freeze. If it comes out that way, you're doing great. That's ideal. All right? So that's what you want to be able to have. To get there, you need this kind of food. Whole foods as opposed to processed foods. Plant foods as opposed to animal foods. We want the most of this. So what that looks like for you and me. And a lot of people tell me, well, there's too many limitations. I can't eat all of those plants. I can't eat that. It's just too boring. There's not enough variety for me. I need variety. How many of you need variety in your diet? Some of you do. Well, I got news for you. Here's variety. Legumes. There happens to be roughly 22,939 different species of legumes. Knock yourself out. All right? Whole grains, 21 major varieties of whole grains. I've only had 15 of them, all right? So you want to have plenty of whole grains. Starchy vegetables. I didn't know this. There are over 4,000 different edible potato varieties. 4,000? And there's over 100 known varieties of squash. Go for it. All right. Vegetables, 1,097 unique cultivated species worldwide. And then in terms of fruit, there's over 2,000 different types of fruit. There are over 275 different kinds of apples. I had no idea. So it's amazing. And then nuts, seeds, and avocados. A little bit will do you well. More than 500 types of avocados. I had no idea. More than 50 different types of nuts, and a number of seed species is even larger. You can have diversity in your gut easily. Easily. It's not a problem. Not a problem. People ask me about sweeteners all the time, so a healthy alternative for sugar and for sweetness is date syrup. It's one of my favorites, so I recommend that. The benefits for this dietary approach are numerous. They're so numerous, I couldn't put them on one slide, but we have research to back up every single one of these notations here. But it absolutely helps you in so many different ways. There are so many benefits to this dietary approach. It's amazing. It really is. Consider this. Ann Wigmore said it well. The food you eat can either be the safest and most powerful form of medicine, or the slowest form of poison. And you get to choose. Because every time you eat or drink, you're either feeding disease or you're fighting it. From a neurological perspective, my food pyramid, I talk about what is life-promoting. It's going to be starchy veggies, whole grains, legumes, greens, colorful veggies, and fruits. Stay up here. These are parasympathetic foods. These will lead to a sympathetic reaction in your body. Meat, dairy, eggs, oils, processed foods, and then sugar, deep-fried foods, sodas, legal drugs, and excitotoxins. All of those will cause a sympathetic reaction in your body. So have your refrigerator look like a garden teeming with life instead of a rotting morgue, rotting of death. Now, one final note, and that is for water. So it's important to get enough water. That also helps the health of your gut. Most people are dehydrated. They don't drink enough water. So this is critically important. All the rest of the stuff is important in lifestyle medicine, but this is critically important. So what's recommended is minimum of 1 ounce per pound of body weight if you weigh less than 96 pounds. Up to a gallon of water per day is perfectly healthy and optimal, especially if you're trying to heal. So if you've got issues, you want to drink more water, more water, more water. Now, don't start off at a gallon of water if you haven't been drinking that much. Don't do that. Gradually increase. Now, if you may need to increase your sodium if it's a dramatic increase and it's really hot, or you may need to decrease your water intake if you have kidney or heart disease. This is a resource for research from Dr. Will Bulsiewicz. This is all the research that is listed in his book. So I thought I'd give you a slide for that. That way you have access to everything that's in his book. Just to give you an idea of some of the other research, in the United States, we have a really horrible set of statistics. From the USDA, we show that the average American only has 12% of their diet come from plants, 25% from animal, and here's the real problem, 63% from processed foods. That's the real problem. It's a huge difference. Now, the secret to success is very simple. Study the successful people and do what they do. So the longest living groups of people on the face of the planet are the blue zones. They have a 400% difference in longevity compared to the rest of the world. So it's huge, a huge difference. So in the blue zones, these 5 areas, including the Seventh-day Adventists in Loma Linda, Southern California, and then the Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica, Sardinia, Italy, Ikaria, Greece, and Okinawa, Japan. So we've actually analyzed their diets. Would you like to see what we discovered? We've analyzed their diets. So in the Nicoya Peninsula, remember, the United States has what percent of their diet come from plants? 12%. So in the Nicoya Peninsula, 58% plants. 58% plants. That's many more times. Okay? In Sardinia, Italy, 63% plants. Remember, you're going to get all the slides. Okay, 63% plants. In Ikaria, Greece, 78% plants. And by the way, none of these have processed foods. None of these populations have processed foods. None of them. Okay, 78% Ikaria, Greece. Loma Linda, Seventh-day Adventists, 81% plants. 81%. All right, and the best health outcomes turn out to be from Okinawa, Japan, with 97% plants. And look at this, 67% of their diet is from one food category, sweet potatoes, the purple sweet potato in Okinawa, Japan. Very healthy, very, very healthy. Canada, our neighbors to the north, looked at this research. They threw out all the private interest groups to come up with the new dietary guidelines for the nation of Canada. Why? Because they are a country with universal health care for their entire population. It's an investment in their population. So they threw out all the private interest groups and said, look at the research and come up with a new food guide for the nation of Canada. Here's what they came up with. 88% plants. Now, we're not the only ones in lifestyle medicine that say that we need to eat more green foods. All of these scientific organizations all say the same. What happened? Okay, there we go. All of these organizations all agree, based on the research, we need to eat more unrefined plant food. More fiber. We need that. They all agree. So Dr. Bulsiewicz's seminar on one slide. Your microbiome, 39 trillion microorganisms, all these particular parts of it. We're 90% bacteria. Changing the microbiome. Fiber is the food for your microbiome, and the microbes process parts of the fiber in the colon and and metabolize it to produce short-chain fatty acids. And those are released that have all of these amazing benefits. So the number one predictor of a healthy gut microbiome is the diversity of plants in your diet. All right, there's the whole seminar on one slide. So you have lots of practices to take on. Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? Okay, come on now, with enthusiasm. All right, so here's the thing. There's a lot of practices to take on. This is all of the practices that we try to tell people, to encourage people to use in lifestyle medicine. For all of this, remember, it's not about perfection. This is all about making progress. It's just making progress. Take little steps, small little steps, and make progress. That's it, a little bit at a time. Just stick with it. Consistency is the key. It really is. So it's about being consistent. Take on one tiny little habit and stick with it. Make it work. So it's progress, not perfection. So how many of you would like to make the rest of your life the best of your life? Okay, good. So if you'd like to do that, imagine for a moment, what would that look like for you? Would it be a life filled with energy and vitality, doing great things, amazing things? I was just at the short course Masters Championship for Masters Swimming in Northern California 2 weekends ago at the North Natomas Aquatic Center. And I watched people in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and even a 95-year-old woman and a 96-year-old man swimming. I mean, really swimming. And it was amazing to watch them. It was extraordinary. So I signed up. I'm going to be swimming in that meet next year. Yes. So do you want to have a life filled with health and energy and vitality and dancing on the beaches of life? But the question is, where are you now? Are you there yet? Chances are you're not. So how will you get from where you are now to where you want to be? Well, just like anything else in life, you need a plan. But do you have a plan that's actually proven to work? Most people do not, especially when it comes to their health. In this country, we have 70% of the American population overweight and obese. We have the highest rates of chronic disease on the face of the planet. Clearly, our healthcare system is not working. Clearly. So I do have a plan. And that is basically what's going to be mapped out in my book. It's a 4-step plan. 4 parts. Number 1, we must begin from within. Because if we don't address our mindset, our thinking, our attitude, our consciousness and awareness, the game's over. We will not be able to win. So we have to be able to win up here first. Secondly, we need to have a proven strategy. No weird stuff, but it's got to be evidence-based. Thirdly, we need to develop the skills around creating habits that stick for a lifetime. How many of you know the science of creating habits that stick for a lifetime? I will teach you. And then the 4th part is being able to create community and support and accountability. Nobody, and I mean nobody, reaches the top level without other people. We all need each other. We all do. So we need that. So that's my 4-point plan, and it works. And then probably after this whole seminar series is done, I will give you more information about my upcoming How to Fully Live 12-week lifestyle medicine immersion program. I'll give you more information on that probably by July. And then other things that I do lifestyle medicine consultations with people. I give them a plan. I set them up with a plan so that they know what they need to do to move forward in a very effective manner. I also do one-on-one coaching. I help people in the long run to be able to help them move, and especially working with very difficult conditions. I've worked with people with cancer and diabetes and heart disease and many other things. And then I also do lifestyle medicine in the workplace, so lifestyle and performance medicine. And it's one of my favorite things to do is transform an entire organization. And this is my contact information. You'll have all of that information. And I want to share with you one of my favorite quotes that one of my dear clients, Bob, and I, we would say this together when we had our coaching calls. And it was one of his favorites. And it's from Hunter S. Thompson, that life is not a journey to the grave to arrive in a pretty and well-preserved body, but rather to skid in broadside, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and loudly proclaiming, wow, what a ride. So I don't know about you, but that's how I'm going out. So I covered a lot for you tonight, did I not? Yes, we did. I know it was a fire hose, but now I'm going to answer all of your questions. So if you have questions, Pedro, do you have the microphone? We've got hands up already. Okay. Woo. All right. Okay.
Who's first?
Let's start with Cindy there and move our way around. Okay, Cindy.
Okay, hi. I was wondering about a colonoscopy when they clean you completely out. I mean, how does that affect your colon, and then how do you get back to normal after you do that?
Oh, so you're talking about hydrocolon therapy.
No, I'm talking about a colonoscopy,
A
where
colonoscopy?
they put the camera up your colon
Okay,
to
so
make
when
sure
they
you
do
don't have
that-
cancer.
Okay, so when they do that, so they're doing an examination to see what's the nature of your tissue. It's looking at it from the inside, and sometimes they'll see things like polyps, or they'll see diverticuli. They'll see that, and sometimes what they do is they go clip those polyps, and then they say, well, everything else is fine, you're on your way, there's nothing else you need to do, come back and see us next year. They never address the cause. So to me, it's kind of a waste of time, money, and energy for the most part. It really is. It's better to be able to start asking the better questions is, what's your diet? Let's talk about your diet. What are you eating? What's your lifestyle like? What's your stress level like? How's your sleep? How are your bowel movements? I want to check all that, because all of that is very important to the health of your colon. So it's not sufficient to really help address the cause. So. Well, what's the effect on your microbiome?
What do you do after to fix yourself back to
Well,
normal?
you just have to eat the regular food again. That's all you have to do. Your body will adapt very quickly. Yeah, that's all you have to do. It's not a permanent situation. It's temporary. So they just kind of flush everything out so they can take a look, take a camera, and do whatever they need to, and then you just have to restore it. Yeah.
Piggybacking on what she said,
Okay.
I've had colon hydrotherapy a number of times, and do you think that's useful? I've had it when I've had medication, pain medication, like opioids after surgeries, which are totally constipating for me, like oxycodone. I hate that stuff, but I have to take it when I've had joint surgeries. And then I can't poop at all. So then I've had the colon hydrotherapy, which works.
It can be very helpful.
It doesn't hurt though.
It can be very helpful to do that. The key in colon hydrotherapy is to be able to, again, restore the colon microbiome by eating the diverse diet. So that's what you want to be able to do. Yeah, question there.
Can you, on your list there, you have a point that says about midway, it says reduce fats, no oil. I'm specifically asking about what kind of oil we can cook with.
Oh, okay. I'm going to send you in the follow-up email how to actually cook without oil. Okay, so all oils are inflammatory, even the extra virgin olive oil. Yes, there are some parts of it that are healthy to you, but the thing is, it's got mostly the saturated fats and everything else that's unhealthy for you. So we show in the research clearly, even the extra virgin olive oil, cold press, everything else, still cause an inflammatory response in your arteries. So our recommendation is actually to cook without oil, and there's ways to do it. Now, are you a good cook? No. No? Okay. Do you like to cook at all? Sometimes? Okay, so a little secret. How many of you know the secret? It's a French secret. The first thing you do is you get that nice skillet, nice and hot, and you put in the onions. And you sweat the onions, and then you use water, and you can actually stir fry all your vegetables very easily without having to use a drop of oil. Works really well. You're welcome. Okay, question here.
I work out pretty hard for my age,
Okay.
and they keep telling you protein, 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 because I'm doing weights and I'm doing plank and, you know, all of that stuff. And we get our heart rate up high. Is that true?
The protein? That
Uh-huh.
You need all that protein? Are you a bodybuilder?
No, obviously.
Okay. Chances are you don't need all that protein if you eat a whole food plant-based
Say
diet.
when you're working out like
course.
that you need a lot of
Yeah,
protein. But no.
that's based on a lot of ancient science that's really outdated. And in fact, let me tell you exactly how old that is. That science was done in the 1870s. That's how old it was. And then 10 years later, the scientist who actually discovered that point, he actually recanted that research and he realized he was wrong. But it was too late because the meat, dairy, and egg industries all used that information and it basically became the foundation for all their marketing ever since. So it's all been marketing. And like I said, I suffer from protein deficiency, okay? Just like Popeye. So you don't need the protein. You don't need protein. What they equate protein is meat, dairy, and eggs. You don't need protein from meat, dairy, and eggs. You get the best quality of protein from your plants. So that's what you get.
I've been doing the protein drinks after working out.
Yeah. Okay. Question over here.
Antibiotics and
I'm sorry?
antibiotics.
Antibiotics?
And the
Okay.
painkillers, are they bad for our gut?
So antibiotics, the problem with antibiotics, most of the time, for years we've used way too many antibiotics. Where's Victoria? Oh, there you are. So, I mean, what type of nursing did you do? Various kinds. So in med-surg, there's a lot of antibiotics distribution, right? And so we've done that so much of the time so that we've done antibiotics like prophylactically, right? You say, okay, because you're here in the hospital, we're going to give you antibiotics even though you don't have an infection. So we've done an over amount of a prescription of antibiotics, and that's harmful to the gut. And so we've been learning more and more about how to actually target that, because when you have antibiotics, it not only kills those specific strains of bacteria that you want to kill, but it kills a whole lot of others. And it kills a lot of the healthy bacteria that we definitely need. So what we have to be able to do is, if you have antibiotics or you've been given antibiotics or you're on an antibiotic regimen, you have to really focus on being able to get that really healthy plant-based diversity of diet in your gut so that you can actually rebuild the microbiome. So you want to do that as much as you possibly can, as quickly as you can. So I hope that can answer your question. Okay, question here, and then we're going to go over there.
My question concerns GERD.
GERD.
The upper end of the tube.
Yes.
If you want to think of
Yes.
it that way.
Yes.
GERD
Gastrointestinal.
tends to damage the linings of the esophagus, as I understand it.
Yeah.
How does any of this affect reducing that?
Yeah.
And how can you reduce it?
So for those of you who don't know, GERD is gastroesophageal reflux disorder. All right, so what happens is that we have belching and we have fluid coming back up from the stomach with that acid, and it starts to damage the esophageal lining. So it's very, very problematic if that keeps being persistent. So one of the things that we see in the research is that being on a plant-based diet actually helps to reduce GERD. In many cases, I've had several people eliminate their GERD completely by switching over to a plant-based diet. There might be food sensitivities. So those have to be looked at as well. So we have to examine that, because sometimes people who have GERD, they become so sensitive to certain foods that stimulate the GERD. So we have to be able to target those foods as well. So there's a very complex process to examine it. But generally speaking, if we eliminate the foods that don't digest, which is the meat, dairy, and eggs in particular, and the processed foods, I can tell you, having done the autopsies, meat does not digest. It putrefies and it rots. I've done the autopsies. So that's a real problem. And so we have to look at the whole diet. So if we can examine all those factors, then we can start to help you and work on that. Okay, question here.
Are biomes really fussy eaters? Because if I have fresh vegetables, it tastes great. If I have frozen vegetables, they're just so-so. If I have canned, well, they're tolerable. Does it all taste great to my biome?
You know, it might depend on you. So there is a difference in how food is delivered to your body. So your microbiome, because it's very sensitive to what you're getting, and your bacteria are very sensitive to that. So we know that for many people, a raw food diet is actually optimal for them. Not everybody can tolerate a raw food diet. I can't. I can handle some raw, but not completely. And then you have some people that can tolerate, if it's fresh or frozen, they can handle those fairly well. But canned sometimes depends on how it's processed. So if it's canned and it's in there for a long period of time, sometimes they add salt, sometimes they add other preservatives. It depends. So it depends on how the food is actually delivered to your microbiome. And your bacteria is going to say, Ted, you got to give me fresh food. And that's about it. I'm only going to be happy if you give me fresh food or the best organic food you can possibly give me. And if you give me this cheap stuff that comes out of a can, I'm not going to be happy with you. And so it's going to give you a message. Well, it's not just your taste buds, but it's also your entire microbiome. Because our taste buds are giving us the initial indicator. It's consistent with the rest of the microbiome, so it's connected. So how you taste food is also a message to the rest of your microbiome. So if it tastes very healthy for you, then chances are it is healthier for you. Good question, though. Yeah, okay.
I hear a
Joan.
lot about fermented foods like kombuchas and sauerkrauts and all. Are these necessary or not particularly, or are they even helpful?
Okay.
Careful, I like mine.
Okay. Yeah. So again, this is a very good question. What we've seen in the research that many cultures have had fermented foods for a long period of time. Now, some cultures don't have hardly any, so very, very limited. So it depends. Everybody's gut is a little bit different. Remember, we talked about how there's anywhere from about 300 to 1,000 different strains of bacteria in your gut. So for some people, they have the bacteria that actually do very well with fermented foods and are able to actually metabolize those foods very well, and they produce a lot of good short-chain fatty acids from them. But if you have different population groups that don't have fermented foods, they may not be able to tolerate those fermented foods quite so easily. I grew up without fermented foods. Okay, it was just beans, rice, and pico de gallo. That was it. Okay, so the thing is, fermented foods really don't agree with me. They don't. They are just not very pleasant. I don't care for how kombucha makes me feel, or even though they might be healthy for me, they don't resonate for me. They have a message for me, all right? So you have to pay attention to the message. Your body will tell you a lot of messaging. So you want to pay attention to what works for you. And each of you is going to be different. Okay? Each and every one of you is going to be different. So you have to be able to look at your body like a scientist and experiment with which foods actually work well for you. Okay? Because every one of us has different genetics, different cultural backgrounds. It really is different for every single person, every single one of us. Okay? And you come from North New England, so your diet's different over there. No, they do the research studies on people that actually do well with it, and that's great. That's how they actually do those research studies. But the thing is, it's different for every single person. My experience, it's different for every single person. I'll just give you one more example. One of my clients, I'll remember, from Iran. Completely different diet. He grew up in Iran, in Tehran. And so for him, raw food did not agree with him because he needed cooked foods for him. And that's what worked for him. And that's what gave him energy. He tried salads, did not work. But when he had cooked food, it was beautiful, worked for him. So everybody's different. So play around with it. Have fun, experiment, go to different.
Is psychosomatic or it really helps me?
I don't know. If you like it, stick with it. If you like it, stick with it. Okay, back there? Yes, okay. Okay, very good. That's okay.
So I'm plant-based, so I'm asking this question for friends and family. You talked about research about the SAD diet versus plant-based. Is there research or information about like organic grass-fed meat or wild-caught versus plant-based? Because I've heard that as a dispute against it.
Well, sure. There's a lot of people that want to make sure that their wild-caught salmon and their grass-fed beef is perfectly healthy. Here's the issue with that. So if you look at it from a biochemical standpoint, the amino acid composition of meat has such a high level of leucine, and that level of leucine is so high, that particular amino acid, it actually turns on the mTOR gene, which stimulates the growth hormone in creating cancer. So you cannot change that amino acid content. I don't care how grass-fed the beef is, and I don't care how wild the salmon is, because that's the amino acid composition of the animal flesh. And so my good friend, Dr. Milton Mills, has a very good seminar on it. Send me an email. I'll be happy to send it to you. And he is an absolutely brilliant physician who's majored in biochemistry at Stanford University. And he knows his stuff frontwards, backwards, and sideways. So wonderful lecture. And he helps to understand how these foods, yes, they're animal foods, but their amino acid composition is so radically different that it actually stimulates cancer and other things too. So great question. Yeah, we have lots of research.
Last question.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so kidney stones are going to be related to the diet as well. So being in the sympathetic state for whatever food they're eating, and a lot of other complications. So there's a lot of factors that contribute to that. A lot of factors. Okay, Victoria has to ask her question. Okay, you want the microphone?
All of these vitamins and minerals and what have you that people take. Now, the reason I've asked you a little bit about this before, and I'm not sure I understood it. I have been mainly on a lacto-vegetarian diet forever.
Mm-hmm.
And my doctor says you need to eat more beef. And that's his whole thing. Has me on iron pills. I get lazy about taking them, and my hemoglobin essentially drops. And I know when it drops. But what about all these additives things that they're talking about, taking vitamins for this and vitamins for that and so on and so forth? What about that?
Okay, so this is a good question. So the thing about it is that most of us in the medical community have been taught and trained to think in a way that there's one cause for one effect. And that's not the case. It's not the case. Dr. T. Colin Campbell has a wonderful book that I recommend. It's called Whole, W-H-O-L-E. It's a wonderful book. Dr. T. Colin Campbell, he wrote the China study. If you haven't read that, I highly recommend that as well. So read that. Now, here's what happens. And this is a pitfall, especially being a fellow health professional. I know, okay? Because we got trained a particular way. My iron's low. I need to take an iron supplement in order to get it back up. That's like two doctors coming into the kitchen, seeing that there's water on the floor, and what they do is they grab a couple of mops, and they never stop to look and think, where's the water coming from? Okay, and the sink is overflowing and the drain is plugged. So lifestyle medicine, we're going to look at what's causing this iron to drop. What's causing that? Now, there's a lot of different factors that could be at play. Stress, lack of sleep, being sedentary, There's certain foods that actually could trigger different kinds of things. There could be other conditions going on. There's a whole list of things we need to look at. It's not just one thing. And just trying to put a Band-Aid on it by giving you iron pills is not the answer. It's rarely going to do much. If it does something, it will do it temporarily at best. And then you're dependent on these iron pills, which there's all kinds of complications from that. And they're not good for you because now you have higher risk of kidney stones and all kinds of other problems. So that's the challenge that we face, is that we have been conditioned to believe it's one cause for one effect. Yeah, one cause for one effect. And that's not how it works. So that's why when I do lifestyle medicine consultations, I'm looking at everything. And it's a big circle, okay? And a lot of times I can help people with their diet to fine-tune it. So then what happens, we swing the pendulum from being just slightly sympathetic to being slightly parasympathetic. And then your iron levels go right back to where they need to be. Happens, I've actually done that many times. Okay, question, Dick. All right.
A lot of us have read the China study. Would you comment on that? Because it was talked about later that there was some flawed research, not true. Would you comment on that?
Okay. So being a personal friend of Dr. T. Colin Campbell, having had dinner with him several times, and his wonderful wife, Dr. Campbell is probably one of the most genuine, authentic, heartfelt human beings I've ever met in my life. He's a caring, wonderful, loving human being. All research is flawed. He will tell you that himself. There is no such thing as perfect research. It doesn't exist. What his research did was look at so many different variables and so many different population groups over time in China, that when you looked at the collective of all the evidence and you put it together, the picture was pretty darn solid, because there was so many people that were evaluated over a long period of time, and we looked at a lot of evidence. So it's very convincing. Yes, it's not a double-blind, randomized clinical trial. Okay? That's an epidemiological study that was done with a lot of evidence gathered, because we gathered a lot of blood studies. So a lot of information was gathered. Now, I studied epidemiology, and I also studied clinical research when I was in medical school. So both of those help to give us a more complete picture. When you look at evidence, there's a wonderful author, his name is Adam Grant, and he wrote a book. It's not in health at all. It's called Think Again. He's a psychologist. Now, what he talks about is how we can actually start to think like a scientist, which means we need to be able to propose a hypothesis and then test it. We test it against what we call the null hypothesis, based on, we're assuming that it's not true. So we're trying to disprove that this hypothesis is true. So that's what he did. And he looked at all this evidence, and it was rather convincing to look at it. And when you look at research, I look at both the empirical research that's traditionally done, so your clinical randomized trials, you look at those, but then you also look at the epidemiological research studies, because that gives you patterns to notice those patterns. I've done research on the United States to look at the epidemiological patterns of chronic disease. And you know what? It's rather convincing, because the patterns of chronic disease are all distributed in the same geographical areas. And the 10 states with the lowest life expectancy in the United States happen to be all next to each other. Now, what are the statistical odds of that? 1 in 10 billion, maybe. So the thing is, we have to look at the whole picture. And there is no such thing as perfect research. A lot of people like to throw rocks. They do. And they threw rocks at Dr. T. Colin Campbell. He is not a debater at all. He is this calm, peaceful, loving man. And he's not one to put up a fight with anyone. Even though he's absolutely brilliant, He doesn't put up a fight. Instead, he wrote a whole book, another book called Whole. And he wrote another book called The Future of Nutrition. Insightful, well put together, lots of information and research. So that's what I invite people to look at. And so there's lots of people that are naysayers. I've seen lots of them. I don't pay attention to them. There's a critic, as Teddy Roosevelt, the credit does not belong to the critic. Belongs to the man in the arena. So, question here.
I was going to say, if anybody has questions, to take them after so we can...
Take them after.
So we can let others go that need to go.
Yes, by all means.
So if you want to talk and ask in-person questions, feel
I
free
will
to do
stay, and I will turn my microphone off. So
Yes, and we'll cut the
please
stream off.
Come up and
And,
take up the front row.
if you have any
Thank you for
questions.
being here. Make sure you filled out a card. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Make sure you filled out a card if this was your first time so I can send you the follow-up email. There's some cards back there. Please be sure to fill that out. And then